if you are on the left, or specifically the sort of the pro-Palestinian, Israel is committing a genocide, Israel is starving Palestinians, that kind of left, you pretty much, if you buy Coca-Cola, you're basically killing babies in Gaza and all that. Well, we increasingly see how crazy they get. We have the person we'll talk about today, Peter Beinart. Is an interesting story because he went to, he spoke to Jews. He went to Israel and he gave a lecture or he gave sort of like a speech in Tel Aviv University. Now, talking about Peter Beinart, I wasn't aware of him before, but apparently he has been in American politics for decades. He's a Jewish American journalist. He wrote for Haaretz, Forward, Jewish Currents, so the sort of left wing, almost socialist or even socialist. I think Forward was a socialist. Jewish magazines that are very, I would say, anti-Israel or to some extent even pro-Palestinian. So no kind of like Zionist, no, not kind of like right-wing thing. So this is who Peter Beinart is. He recently, earlier this year, even wrote a book called "After Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza." A reckoning, which argued that Jewish text, history, and language have been deployed to justify mass slaughter and starvation. So definitely not, Netanyahu lover, not definitely somebody that the left would come after because he's supporting the genocide, the supposed genocide. He also supports the one-state solution, which, for those who don't know, is basically establishing one state where Palestinians are free to kill Israelis without having to cross the Gazan border, without having to cross the IDF soldiers to get to civilians. I mean, James, we'll go into sort of this whole story a bit more, but what do you think about this person? Is this, some kind of right wing nut that the left usually goes after?
Well, what was interesting is the way the left went after one of their own for simply speaking in Tel Aviv. I mean, it really shows the religious nature of these kooks. It's not an intellectual argument they're making, but they're making an argument against the legitimacy of Israel as such. So it's the, boycott, divest, it's the ban Israel and anyone who does business with Israel movement. In other words, these people want Israel gone. And if you think Israel is the problem in that sea of authoritarian Islamic nations, then you better check your premises. That's the country they regard as illegitimate. That's the country they regard as requiring being wiped out. So it's really a cover, it's a moral cover for their own genocidal. They are the ones, of course, Hamas is specifically for genocide, Iran is for genocide, and they are covering up the activities of the people who actually want genocide and who would happily engage in atrocities like October 7th because they regard Israel as illegitimate. And because they regard Israel as being so, and of course, the facts are completely ridiculous. Israel has tried to feed the population, taken unprecedented steps, which they ought never have done. I mean, the history of warfare, you don't feed the enemy population. And yet, Israel has tried to feed the enemy population the idea that there's mass destruction and starvation on purpose. Israel fully had the power to engage in genocide and did not. If the Palestinians did, they had the power to engage in that kind of genocide, they would. Now, that's the moral stance that these people have taken and that we've articulated many times on this program. But what I find fascinating is that even if you speak, they hate Israel and they want to delegitimize Israel, and they think Israel is so rotten and needs to be eliminated, wiped off the face of the earth. So actually, it is a cover, as I say, for their tacit genocidal intentions. Because if there is this one state solution, of course, it means the slaughter of 8 to 9 million Jews in the area, right? So, so as a cover, the whole thing is a cover for their defense of genocidal people like Hamas and Iran. Okay, but on the left, if you depart from this dogma, if you depart from the anti-Israel dogma and see how detached from reality it actually is, you can't even speak in Israel. He says, well, wait, I was talking, if we're going to criticize Israel, I should go to Tel Aviv and make a speech there. What an opportunity to get our side, our anti-Israel side, out to Israelis. To Israelis. Well, no, you can't do that. You can't even talk to them. Whatever their own opinions are. I mean, they could be leftists writing for Haaretz. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. You went to Israel, and that is a moral sanction. Now, consider the way they can. I think moral sanctions important myself, and there are absolutely people that I wouldn't talk to. I mean, if it wasn't Adolf Hitler engaged in genocide, I would not talk. I would not talk to Hamas or Iran. Okay, they are off the radar screen, but I would make intellectual arguments that get me there. These people don't make intellectual arguments, they make religious arguments, and they're like a medieval church enforcing discipline within the left. So what you do with the dogma, the anti-Israel dogma, is you excommunicate people who would even dare speak in Tel Aviv at all to Israelis in any way, shape, or form. So he left the reservation, as we say, if I can use the idiom, and therefore must be criticized, must be pounded upon. And the worst element of it was his cringing apology. Well, I did. Of course, I'm on your side.
Yeah, we'll go to apology
Okay.
in a second, but something also important to mention. We talked about sort of and like the sanction from his side to what he believes is a genocidal state. But we'll talk about that when it comes to the apology. But the fact that Tel Aviv University allowed somebody like this to come in, I mean, I'm all for a certain amount of intellectual openness, especially when it comes to universities. But again, this is somebody who is openly calling for the destruction of Israeli state. Again, anybody who calls for a one-state solution, as it is right now, you are saying that the Palestinians who, on October 7, civilians, again, we are talking about Palestinian civilians, have went into Israel, started killing Jews, kidnapping Jews, raping, doing horrible things. The ones who stayed inside of Gaza have celebrated this attack. 2 years on, they still think it was a good decision. They all support it. We have people abroad, people in Western states who some of them are Palestinian. I mean, yesterday we talked about the NHS. Somebody who works for the NHS and is fan of October 7. It says it was a good thing. Defends October 7. So anybody who argues that these Palestinians should be in the same state in Israel with full rights, full movement, full sort of citizenship, so full voting rights, you are calling for the destruction of the Israeli state as it is right now. That's simply what it is. It's like saying, the Nazis who supported the Nazi party should be like in the same state as the French or the Czechs or whoever. Like, you are arguing for the destruction of that state. And so, yeah, the fact that Tel Aviv University allowed somebody like this to come in is, I think, problematic in itself.
Let's consider the two issues you raised there, legally and morally speaking. In the United States, if you call for the destruction of the United States, the violent overthrow of the American government, let's say you're a communist, that's protected free speech, unless what you're saying is actually designed to incite immediate violence. It's free speech. Theoretically calling for the destruction of the United States. Now, I think things do change a bit when you're in a war situation. That is to say, during World War II, we wouldn't have allowed Nazi propagandists just to have at it and recruit Nazis on the streets as we're fighting a war against the Nazis. I think that changes the context somewhat, and Israel is still in a wartime situation. Certainly, politically, free speech in a normal situation I would think, a free country, although most countries don't have free speeches under my lights, but free speech would normally allow you to say Israel ought not to exist, and that would be free speech. Now, as I say, things are a little different in a war situation. Morally speaking, it's reprehensible. Morally speaking, I wouldn't have tea, I wouldn't have a conversation with someone who said that Israel should be wiped off the map, which is in effect what he's saying. And it's funny how, as I say, the paradox is using the language of genocide, right? The people they're defending, the Palestinians, for example, are racists. They couldn't be any more racist or collectivist or mystic, knuckle-dragging barbarian dark age mentality. That's what they're defending. I mean, but people who gaze for Palestine, if like chickens for KFC. If you're at that level of blindness, cognitively imposed disconnection from reality, of course, you won't see it like that. And so the one nation in the area that is semi-free, as opposed in a sea of authoritarian dictatorships and theocracies, they're the ones that you want to criticize. They're the bad guys. They're the victims of genocidal intent. Just because they have the strongest military, right? Their neighbors can't completely engage in their genocidal intentions. They can do October 7th here and there, but if they had the military strength Israel did, they would absolutely engage in genocide. So calling for a one-state solution of this kind, saying that we can't morally sanction Israel at all, is to call for another Jewish genocide, because those people actually want genocide, engage in atrocities, and simply lack the power. Israel, which fully had the power to wipe out the population of Gaza in a matter of hours, has restrained itself from doing so. And yet they're the bad guys. And yet they're the evil ones who you can't even speak to. You can't even sanction them. Now, that is moral inversion and moral perversion of the worst kind. But what's interesting is that within the left, they do not allow intellectual debate of any kind, of any kind. Even going over to Israel and speaking at Tel Aviv University, that's it. You're off the map. You're evil for sanctioning them to that extent. Now, the defenders of civilization should discover morality. And I don't mean rediscover, I mean discover morality for the first time, because apparently people are unable to think ethically. I mean, if that's the factual situation on the ground, you can see that there's a real challenge here. The bad guys are the ones who are the morally righteous ones. They're defending evil with moral righteousness. And, just as the Palestinians themselves and the Iranians themselves do. But when it comes to Western intellectuals, there's no excuse. I mean, these are people with PhDs calling for the most savage, retrograde, illiberal societies in the world are what they're defending, without any notice of the paradox, without any, recognition of their collectivism, their defense of genocide at all. That's not even on the radar screen. It's the civilized Israelis who have restrained themselves too much, in my view, from doing anything that might even be considered or thought to be, war crimes of any kind. It is absolute detachment from reality, and of a religious kind. And so the intellectuals on the left are down to demonizing human beings as individuals. You're evil. You're supporting Israel. You can't even go there. You can't morally sanction them at all. So they're the ones with the moral righteousness. And the defense of Israel is always apologizing, compromising. At the end of the day, that is not good. That means the morally consistent ones will win in the long run. Trust me. Until and unless there gets, some moral backbone on the side of the people who defend civilization, who really are defending human life here, it's a grim situation. But you can see on the left, it's really the church of leftist dogma, which says it's, Israel's an imperialist state that will trot out, even recycle it, even if the concepts don't correctly apply. They'll recycle their, colonialism, imperialism, Marxist lingo against Israel. And if you leave the reservation just a little bit, if you give any kind of sanction to the state of Israel, you get excommunicated. They'll rip your tongue out.
We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, James, have you heard of the Irish author who refuses to allow her books into Hebrew and won't let her work be published in Israel? I think he posted the name Sally Rooney. Not surprising.
No, I've not heard of her, but it's not surprising, right? I'm afraid anti-Semitic bigotry Ireland is steeped in it. I know people who live in Ireland confirm that to me, that Ireland is currently steeped in an ugly, racist, anti-Semitic attitude. It's hardly surprising from a country deeply mired in medieval Catholic bigotries. But I'm afraid that's the state of Ireland today. They haven't joined the 21st century. They're still mired in their anti-Semitic medieval Catholic bigotries. And so, it's racism. What can I say? The Irish people are steeped in anti-Jewish racism.
We have another super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, James, when I was in the US, I cut off communication with my cousin in Canada over comments he posted about Charlie Kirk, and his leftist had enough. Any quick thoughts, or should we move to apology?
If someone said Charlie Kirk's dead, hooray, yeah, I wouldn't have anything to do with them. I mean, come on. I strongly disagree with Charlie Kirk. I mean, there are many, many, many ways. But the one thing I will not do is say anything or say that Charlie Kirk asked for it, because he didn't. No, I morally wouldn't have anything to do with someone who cheered the death of Charlie Kirk, even though I have massive disagreements with Charlie Kirk. That was murder of a man for what he said.
And we have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. Now let's look at Peter Beinart's apology. So this is what he posted on X. By speaking earlier this week at Tel Aviv University, I made a serious mistake. In the past, when formulating my views about Israel-Palestine, I've sought out Palestinian friends and interlocutors and listened carefully to their views. In this case, I did not. I really wanted to speak to Israelis. In the US, I've cultivated conversations with Jews with whom I strongly disagree, both to listen and in hopes of changing their minds. Over the horrifying last 2 years, I've hoped for more conversations with Israelis to explain why I believe Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, why I believe Jewish supremacy is fundamentally wrong. My motivation for giving the talk wasn't financial. I didn't receive an honorarium. I wanted to say certain things to an Israeli audience. Speaking at Tel Aviv University seemed to offer the chance. And so it goes for a little bit more. Maybe we can finish it later.
I didn't take
But again, this is such a cowardly way to sort of talk about it. Like, either you believe, like, I don't know, would this person go in 1942 to Germany to like give a speech to like a Nazi university, or to any university for that matter, that, hey guys, you're perpetrating a genocide, maybe you shouldn't do so. Like, if you believe Israel is committing a genocide, and that's why the people that are further left than him, people who are calling for boycott, people who are calling for destruction of Israel, they are the ones winning, because they are the ones who are actually fully consistent. This idea that this person believes Israel is committing war crimes, is committing genocide, and you can talk somebody out of it. No, the way you stop genocide is you bomb the people who are trying to do so.
If they're
This
doing
is
it,
not the way.
you bomb them, right?
So that's why this person is being called out. And he didn't stand by his. Like, either, you believe there is a conversation to be had with Israelis, and then you have it. You don't apologize for it. You stand by your decision. Or, you basically are admitting that your decisions are not based on any reality, are not based on any considerations. You just do whatever you feel like. And then if somebody has a problem with it, you just go and apologize.
Well, you see, he made them. What a disgusting. I didn't accept any money, but it was a mistake. But then he explains his justification, which apparently wasn't good enough for him, because he said, I made a mistake. He said, I thought that I could go and talk to Israelis and, engage with them. But you guys are right. They're beyond engagement. They're beyond discussion. Now, he claims to have facts. I would explain to them why it is a genocide. No, he can't explain why it's a genocide. But the point is, even attempting to give facts for it is unacceptable. You don't discuss it. You don't try to defend our position. It's his enemies that are more aware of the fact that they don't have a factual, logical case. Don't even try. Don't even try to talk to them. They're beneath contempt. Okay, I made a mistake in attempting to change their minds. That's what he's saying. It is a fully religious attitude. It is dogmatism, sheer dogmatism. Their opposition to Israel is religious. And I don't mean the Muslims in the area. I mean Western intellectuals. Western intellectuals on the left have a fully religious, dogmatic, intrinsic, as we objectivists will call it, an intrinsicist attitude. It is in their own fundamental way, it is racist. Of course, they're used to thinking in collectivist terms. And so the overt racism of the local Muslim population against Israel is something they will go out of their way to defend. And by implication, they become even if they've got Jewish background, even if they're Jews themselves, they are fully engaged in this kind of collectivist, mystical rooted bigotry. And you can see it coming out in just the way they talk. It's sheer dogma. And don't you even try to persuade the other side. Don't you even try to make a factual, logical case. They're beneath contempt. And if that's the case, then you just wipe them out, right? It's like the attitude you had. Yeah, when someone's engaged in a genocide, you don't debate them, you fight back with all of your might. Well, that's the position they've taken. So Israel should be wiped off the globe. And the people, believe me, the people who are eager to do that and who surround Israel would do that. They would there are many, many people in that area who would happily slaughter 8 million Jews who live in the region.
Yeah, and I think that's why, fundamentally, you have to make a choice. Either you believe Israel is committing a genocide or Israel is not committing a genocide. Again, in the past, when NATO or when the Western nations thought somebody is committing a genocide, we did bomb the hell out of them. We did the bombing of Serbia. We, attacked Syrian the weapons of mass destruction. We invaded Iraq because of possible, even though maybe it wasn't fully justified. That's a problem. But when we actually do believe that we attacked Iran when they are developing their nuclear weapons, when there is a possibility of war crimes, when there is a possibility of heavy possible genocide or anything in that regard, Western nations have always interfered. Not always, to as they should. I don't think that alone is a justification. I think nations have to consider their own self-interest. But yeah, that's what they do. So either you stand by Western nations and their actions, or you go with what these people are saying. You cannot compromise. You cannot go halfway there. And yeah, the fact that this person, I mean, people can look him up on X. Nobody's buying it. And this is the thing, and this, direct message to Peter Beinart. They won't love you. You're a Jew. They'll never love you. The only way, they'll tolerate you is if you renounce your not even your Judaism, but what you were born as, your your kind of race, your ethnicity, or whatever you want to call it. Which of course is kind of hard. It's like asking an African American to give up on your being black. It's kind of hard to do so, and that's what racism is. That's what
I'm
anti-Semitism
told I
is.
need to check my whiteness, but that's really hard for me to do. As you pointed out, it's built in. It's a non-volitional characteristic. I know they're accustomed to collectivist thinking. They can't think in any other terms. Their minds are conditioned to think groupthink, collectivism, tribalism. That's the way they're conditioned to think. Western intellectuals. I'm not talking about the religious, as I say, the religious fanatics in the region. We know they're collectivist mystics from the Dark Ages, but they're defenders among the American British intellectuals. They are worse. They're at a lower status, but they're just as collectivist, just as mystical, just as, if this notion that defending yourself is somehow an atrocity, it's really what they're saying. Defending yourself at all is a war crime. And you'll hear it in various ways, but 20th century totalitarianism would still be with us. The Empire of Japan, the Nazis, the Soviet communists, they'd still be with us. But if these people had their way, it took massive war and massive Cold War. It took massive efforts, military efforts, to contain and destroy 20th century totalitarianism to the extent that it was contained and destroyed. This idea that Israel has to fight wars in this way would only be a formula for continued, well, look at the nations, look at Iran, a theocracy, a horrific authoritarian democracy where women get killed and die in prisons simply because they show a little hair under their hijab. No, that's the kind of ruthless dictatorship that they're defending. And that's what they are defending. I mean, just look at Israel versus the countries around them. Where is their free speech? Where is there some defense of individual rights? Where is there some kind of respect for civilization and progress? It's only in Israel. No, they confess their values, and their values are anti-life, anti-human. There's no question about it. And again, I'm talking about Western intellectuals who have a medieval religious dogmatic view. If you even go and try and talk in Israel, you will be excommunicated from their ranks and without a hearing, because you can't even make a case. You don't even go argue with them. Don't even go try and persuade them. It's not a question of logic or evidence. Because he said, well, I was going to present evidence. No, can't do that. Can't do that. You can't even talk to them. I guess then the only thing to do is go after them, violently. So they end up justifying October 7th, just like that doctor with the National Health Service we talked about the other day. On the left, they are defending atrocities. They're defending murderers. They're defending the actual genocidal intentions of groups like Hamas. It's either or, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real simple choice, and they understand the simplicity of the choice. They've clicked over, and they are completely on the side of medieval irrationalism, collectivism, racism, violence, genocide, even though they steal the word. It's any act of self-defense that would be genocide, even if it doesn't even resemble a genocide. But what would you call, the Allies' actions during World War II in Dresden? I mean, places like Dresden and Frankfurt were utterly destroyed. Oh, America dropped 2 atomic bombs, and that saved, no doubt, many, many, many more lives than it cost. And it turned Japan into a decent place. And it would not have been had they been allowed to continue under their previous regime. The destruction of the regimes of Germany and Japan took a lot of violence, and none of that violence was genocide. And if none of that violence was genocide, then Israel has not even come close to perpetrating anything that could be fairly described as a genocide. Warning people to get out of buildings before they bomb them, trying to feed the enemy population, unprecedented steps in the history of warfare. No, they should have been much more aggressive and much sooner. They should have handled it like the Allies did during World War II, right away, decisively, and completely, right up front. Now, that doesn't mean wiping out the entire population necessarily, but it means making your point and making it impossible for them to engage in any further actions. Violent actions. That's what self-defense is for. And if you don't succeed in disabling the aggressor, you're just perpetuating war, endless, perpetual war. And of course, that's the preferable position for the left, apparently, as if we can't get to our ultimate goal, which is the destruction of Israel. And you confess it. And in this debate, you can hear among these leftists, they're confessing that's their goal, the destruction of Israel.
And we'll continue this conversation on the reality show in just a minute, especially when it comes to the fact that many people are turning on Israel and what role do, even people like this play in that. So make sure to join us on the reality show in just a minute or so. Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the reality show in just a bit. Bye-bye.
Okay.